Are we online? It looks like we are. Okay, today is October 17th, 2022 at 6 p.m. This is an assembly meeting, and to start this meeting off, Clerk Thompson will give the oath of office to new assembly members Marsh and Newman.
Thank you. Donna and Scott, if you'll please stand and raise your right hand. Donna and Scott, do you solemnly affirm that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Alaska and the ordinances of the Petersburg Borough, and that you will honestly, faithfully, and impartially perform the duties of assembly member for the Petersburg Borough, Alaska to the best of your ability?
Do.
Thank you.
Okay, after we get the signatures from the two new assembly members, we'll start the meeting. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Jeff?
Here.
Bob?
Here.
David?
Here.
Donna?
Here.
Thomas?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Scott?
Okay, we have a full assembly this evening. It's time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next item on the agenda this evening is assembly meeting minutes from September 19th, October 3rd, and October 7th. I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes. So, second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Item 5, amendment and approval of tonight's meeting agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented if there's no amendments. So, second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, we move forward with the agenda as presented. Next item, public hearings. There are 2 public hearings this evening. The first public hearing is for ordinance 2022-13. This is an ordinance determining that property conveyed to the borough in a tax foreclosure proceeding shall not be retained for a public purpose and shall hereafter be sold. Anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this public hearing, or anybody calling in, Clerk Thompson?
I have no one on the phone.
Okay, I see no interest from people in the audience, so that public hearing is now closed. Second public hearing this evening is for ordinance 2022-15. This is an ordinance adjusting the fiscal year 2023 budget for known changes. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak during this public hearing? Please state your name and who you represent. And there's a 5-minute time limit.
Good evening, members of the Assembly. My name is Michelle Fent, and I'm here speaking on behalf of myself. I was disappointed when last the Assembly discussed the funding request for the police dash cams. So in particular, I'm speaking to the point 12 of the 2022-15 budget amendment. Firstly, I find it highly inappropriate that the Assembly member whose money is made in this town by defending the community members on criminal matters was the primary speaker against the dash cams. Unless he is willing to sign a commitment for his law firm to never practice criminal defense law in Petersburg, I ask Member Feinwalsh to recuse himself from any further discussion on any police matters, that his last testimony about the dash cams be ignored, and that he recuses himself from any further voting, as it is a conflict of interest for any defense attorney in this town to speak on any police appropriations. Secondly, in today's world, the benefits far outweigh the costs. Being a fiscally conservative person, I appreciate the debate over the dash cam expense. However, in nearly all the articles I have read, the discussions favor dash cams. I find this to be true in terms of the return on investment and the deterrent of further crimes such as resistance and assaults on police officers. Presence of these cameras have been shown to actually aid in the de-escalation of conflicts. Additionally, I don't know what your research shows, but mine leads me to believe that just one case against the borough will cost the borough a minimum of double the price of the dash cams. The presence of the dash cams will not only aid the police department in prosecutions of crimes, but in defense of the proper actions of police officers. Much of the benefit you may not even see, because when criminals know that they have been filmed, they are less likely to bring erroneous claims against the department, again, saving the borough money. Articles also show that the general taxpaying person favors dash cams. Surveys favored dash cams for police departments anywhere from 70 to 90% of the community surveyed. And I don't believe that Petersburg is any different than these other communities. With all that going for them, the Assembly needs to support the acquisition of the Axon police dash cams. It is my understanding that this request has been well thought out by the borough manager and the police department, and is essentially a better replacement of the cameras that we used to have. Whatever dollars you use, I believe that it will be money well spent. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to participate in this public hearing?
Good evening. My name is Catherine Kowalski, and I'm here to represent myself. And I'm in favor of the dash cam funding going forward. I'm just going to start with a story. As you know, my family has owned the local pharmacy for the past 53 years. And about 20 years ago, we had a person that attempted to break in. Our cameras worked. The police officers were able to use the information and arrest the perpetrator that morning before he tried to get out of town. So it was pretty remarkable. I think it was a matter of maybe 5 hours. They were able to get everything together, find the person, and arrest him. So they're worth the investment. And although, as Michelle said, I appreciate the debate on the fiscal expenditure of dash cams. But when you look at it, it's really quite simple. And the first one being, it does provide safety and security. And that should be our number one goal, whether it's from the borough or from a business perspective. Number two, there is a return on investment for sure. And number three, if we're going to ask the police to do their jobs, we have to give them the tools they need. The police have a unique situation, unlike buildings where you run a business or a borough. You're stationary. They're out and about. They have a job to do on the road, and they need the tools to do it. I hope you all will reconsider and support the dash cams going forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to participate in this public hearing for ordinance 2022-15? Seeing none, that public hearing is now closed. Item 7 on this evening's agenda, bid awards. There are no bid awards. Brings us to item 8. Persons to be heard related to items on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to items related to tonight's agenda? And once again, Clerk Thompson, no one's trying to call in?
No, sir.
Okay, that brings us to item 9, persons to be heard on items unrelated to today's agenda. Please state your name and who you represent.
Hello, my name is Jim Floyd. I represent myself and the 75 people that signed the petition I sent to you guys earlier. In the interest of time, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm sure since I sent it earlier, you had some time to read it. I'm here to request that you change the Borough Assembly meetings to evenings and not noon every other week, every other meeting. According to the Open Meetings Act, the government unit exists to aid in the conduct of the people's business. We, the people, affirm our right to be informed and participate. We contend that holding meetings at noon makes the assembly meetings closed meetings or work sessions where no vote should be taken. It is not the assembly members' business that is discussed, but the people's business. However, when the meetings are held at noon, the people cannot be there to be heard because they are answerable to employers and business hour time constraints. Writing letters is not considered enough participation with the community as a whole. More of us can participate in evenings and are able to call in during evening meetings. The time needs to be set in favor of the community and not the assembly members. The time needs to be set so the majority of the community can be heard. When I was inquiring about this, I was told there was two basic reasons why it was set this way. One is so that people out the narrows could participate. Well, with the advent of remote technology, that excuse is no longer viable, not to mention that serving the needs of the minority at the expense of the majority. The second thing was I heard that members of the borough like to participate in the PA meetings, which are on Mondays at 5. Well, I have it on good authority, it's changing to Thursday anyways. But again, that's the good of a minority at the expense of the majority. Even though this is not a formal process, this is the will of the people you serve. We tried to have an initiative put on the ballot, was denied more than once. You can accept this as our will, or we can get large numbers of the local people to come in here and share their testimony, take up everybody's time. To show up and explain how they are not happy with the new meetings because they can't listen or participate. This is a non-partisan issue. It affects all of us equally. I actually looked up every town in South, well, I didn't look up every town. Every town that I looked up in Southeast also hold their evenings in the evening. This is the only place I've found that has daytime meetings. I'm just asking that you consider this, put it on the next meeting for discussion. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to participate or has any comments on items not on tonight's agenda, items unrelated to today's agenda? Seeing none, that brings us to boards, commissions, and committee reports. There are none this evening. No items under item 11, the consent agenda. So that brings us to the report of other officers. And we have Chief Kerr with us this evening, and he's provided the attached question and answer document regarding the request to purchase Axon in-car cameras. Chief Kerr?
Yes, just first, if anyone has any questions about that question and answer thing, I'll be more than happy to answer those. I just want to add, I'm here in Dallas, Texas right now, attending the International Association of Chiefs of Police. There are just under 700 different vendors here. There are only 3 vendors for in-car cameras. That's Axon and 2 other ones. I met with the other vendors. They asked what body camera systems were running. I told them Axon, and the salesmen were actually pretty nice about it. They kindly asked why we were even having this conversation right now. They told me, I asked them, I told them I'd like to see the other options. They showed me their options, but ultimately they said that I needed to go with Axon. Axon's the leader in the industry. I asked them about how the body cameras work. If I could play there, I would have to switch to their body cameras. I also asked if it would sync with the in-car video. It does not. One of them you have to physically download. The other one you can download. You have a choice of storing it at your facility or on the cloud. But basically, they said if it was their recommendation, if they were the one making the choice, that they would stick with Axon due to the industry leading standards, all the advancements, and they kindly told me that they were a couple years behind Axon's technology. So if you guys have any questions about that question and answer sheet I gave you, I'll be more than happy to answer anything.
Thank you for the update, Chief Kerr. Are there any assembly members that have any questions about the answers to the questions that we asked for at the last meeting that Chief Kerr has provided? Is there any confusion over any of the answers, or have we all, do we all feel that they were answered properly?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you for that. May I address Chief Kerr? Chief Kerr, thank you so much for taking the time to do that detailed report and tally, if you will, of the information that you've received. Is there any doubt in your mind that Axon is the best way to go? with the amount of money attached to that?
No, there's no doubt whatsoever. Basically, in this thing, just so the public will know, when we met with the vendor, we actually chose the technology refresh as one of the options. So basically, Axon, if you guys approve this, Axon will fly up, install all the equipment along with the borough people who we decide to have as installers. Axon will train as many installers as we want for our department. So that future devices can be moved from vehicle to vehicle. They also train you on replacement. So if a certain part of it breaks, they can actually remote in, tell us what's actually wrong with it and tell us what to disconnect, and they can send us the new part. So the technology refresh is we will get all new equipment, and that will last it a long time. Basically, we're purchasing it for 5 years, and then after that 5 years, they will send us all new equipment, all new hardware, cameras with the latest and greatest, and then we will send back all the original stuff that they gave us. And basically, so at 5, we pay it now, and then at 5 years, we get it all brand new again. And one of the assemblymen, I forget which one it was, but they asked how long the system is lasting. When I asked the lady, she had to actually go and ask some of the other salesmen because they still had people running Fleet 2, which was over 10 years ago. And so, I mean, basically you're looking at this right now. So we're basically getting a minimum of 15 years of service out of this stuff for that price.
Thank you for your response, Chief Kerr. Any other assembly members have any questions of the chief while he's with us? Member Kinsinger?
Yes, thank you for answering the questions. One of my original questions, a lot of times with software, you have to pay an annual fee. Is that correct then after 5 years, then we have to pay a yearly fee? And is that a contractual amount, or is that something that would possibly change?
So basically what that is it's a user license agreement, and that provides unlimited storage. It allows supervisors to do the redactions in case we have to do some sort of press release on some video or something like that. If an incident happens, we have the ability to blur out, and we have full use of all this stuff. They provide transcription in case we have to have the video transcribed. And so we get use of evidence.com, we get use of everything. And since our body cameras and the dash cameras sync, those user licenses actually combine together. And so for the entire agency at today's market rate, if we had to pay for a yearly user license fee, we're looking at, I believe it was $3,900 or $3,920 or something like that. It's in the packet. It was so under $4,000 a year, and we're actually have unlimited storage in it and have our user licenses.
Thank you.
Once again, any more questions of Chief Kerr? Okay, thank you, Chief, for providing us with that report. That now brings us to the mayor's report. First off, I'd like to thank Jay Stanton Greger and Chelsea Tremblay on behalf of the Borough Assembly, staff, and residents. I wish to thank Jay Stanton Greger for his 8+ years serving on the Borough Assembly, many as vice mayor, and Chelsea Tremblay for her 3 years of service on the Borough Assembly. Your time and efforts are much appreciated. Thank you for your service. And the borough is seeking letters of interest. The Petersburg Borough is accepting letters of interest from citizens who wish to serve the community by filling one of the vacant seats on the following borough boards until October 2023 municipal election. Harbor and Ports Advisory Board, 1 vacant seat. Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, 1 vacant seat. Letters of interest should be submitted to Clerk Thompson at the Borough offices located at 12 South Nordic Drive by sending the post office box 329, Petersburg, Alaska 99833, or by emailing to dthompson@petersburgak.gov. And we've already received some letters of interest. And at the first meeting in November by charter, we have to appoint representatives, the vice mayor and liaisons to different boards and committees. So by then we'll have enough names, and I intend to have it on the agenda to make the appointments at that time as well. And that's the end of the mayor's report. I'll turn it over to Manager Giesbrecht.
Thank you, sir. Just a big thank you to the homeowners who've come by to pick up their building plans. There are only about 30 or so sets of plans remaining to be collected. If you received a letter from community development, please stop by or let us know if you do not want your plans, and we will have to take care of having them destroyed. For information on the newly adopted tiny house dwelling and detached accessory dwelling unit ordinance, please visit the Community Development Department page on the Borough website. There's a new section with links to the tiny house building code, detailed information on detached ADU standards, and where to get more information. Mountain View Manor Assisted Living, we're getting the carpet laid down in an apartment, and a resident is moving in the end of this week. We also have a pending resident moving in sometime between October 21st and the 28th, and that'll make us, I think, almost full of assisted living. We have been having some maintenance issues on the dishwasher. We had to purchase a new one. It is, excuse me, sorry, that's the hot water heater. The dishwasher, we redid the old one to be able to put it in place so we could remove the newer one, just so we can figure out what's wrong with it. We have not had much luck so far. A hot water heater that we purchased is here and should be installed this week. By the way, these are, I'm making them sound less than they really are. These are commercial grade equipment. So, you know, like for example, I think the hot water heater is $10,000 or $11,000. So they're not cheap equipment. Anyway, I think we're making some headway. The manor is up and working on the setup for Halloween and trick or treating for the children. Property taxes were due in the finance office by 4:30 today, since the 15th falls on a weekend. So if you missed that, call finance. We did receive finally one of our new police vehicles. It's a new Chevy Tahoe. If any of the members of the Borough Assembly would like to see what the new vehicle looks like, it's available for viewing at the PD. Thanks to Sergeant Harris and Officer Wolf, who attended the field training officer certification. This is a added responsibility for police officers, where when we bring a new officer on duty, even if they're experienced, they go through what's called an FTO process to learn the town, and gives our experienced officers a chance to make sure that the officers themselves that we've hired know what they're doing. And to do that, you have to be certified as an FTO trainer. And these two, Sergeant Harris and Officer Wolf, have gone through that training. We currently have a broken spring on the Emergency Operations Center garage, which is up at Mountain View Manor. We've unable to access our maintenance vehicle since October 4th because it is stuck inside and no one seems to know how to undo that spring. The manufacturer has told us they don't want us to cut it or work on it. So anyway, we're working through that, trying to figure out a time that we can get an overhead door type person here to help us get through that, and so we can get back access to our maintenance vehicle. Big thank you to Power and Light, who's been working on switching out the old lamp post lights up the manor with new, more energy efficient versions at elderly housing. Reminder to boat owners, harbor staff will be cleaning up floats of water hoses and clutter to make way for snow removal. Owners, please grab your stuff if you want it. Harbor staff is also touching base with owners with vessels of concern, reminding owners to prep their boats for winter and snow freezing issues. We met with the Corps of Engineers and the contractor for the first of what will be weekly meetings that will occur throughout the South Harbor Dredge Project. Contractor expects to be on the scene the first week of November and set up to start dredging about a week later. Staff will work with the contractor and vessel owners on schedule for moving vessels once they are set up and break ground. last weekend's storm, and it sounds like we're getting a new one coming in. Fortunately, did not cause any major damage, but did result in a lot of clogged ditches throughout town and storm drains. Our public works crew has been responding to these as the reports come in. We are still advertising to fill a sanitation operator position after a recent staff resignation. There have been practically no applicants for this position. We kind of reached out. Ketchikan's also experiencing a shortage of drivers and has been looking at ways to boost interest in their open positions. Requires a CDL, and the new training process for CDLs is a little harder. Garbage bear reports continue to come in, but at a reduced frequency from what we experienced earlier in the season and much less than last year. The bear resistant garbage can straps we are testing seem to be working. Chris and his team found those in Ketchikan, and we ordered some to see how they would work here. We received some video from one of our test locations showing a large bear that was unable to open the can with bear straps installed. So it may be a win for those areas that we have problems with. The gutter contractor has informed us they will not be able to install the gutters on the museum before winter. So our maintenance staff is installing locally available plastic gutters, and hopefully these will serve the purpose until we get the heavier duty gutters installed next spring. Parks and Rec has been communicating with various insurance groups regarding our claim at the pool. We are on track with insurance submittals. All is going well with this, and we have contractors that will be here later this week. Thanks to Darby and his crew, we've gotten all the electrical boxes, breakers, and timer onto the skate pond poles with wire ran. We got assisted with removing some rocks from inside some underground conduit. And next is receiving the light bracket from Tamaco, and Devon is looking at security cameras for up there. Again, this is for the skating rink up by the pool. We have had a leak above one of the heat exchangers of the pool. We were able to do a temporary fix for that, and it should be good now until Apex can get a few more supplies to give it a permanent fix. Probably a week or two away from parts coming in and the availability. As I mentioned, Anderson Electric has their van coming down on the ferry, came down on the 14th with Dick Barron's and their crew to install the exhaust fan ducting, replace some pumps, which we already have, and install shunt breakers. They plan to arrive in town to do this work this week. This will not require a shutdown of the pools. We will increase the pool temps to keep the pools warm while they're working on this equipment. We did have Alan Murph review the sewer issue at the community center, and he feels it is too big a job for his firm, but he'll give us some recommendations on how to proceed. We still have one line to scope. We're having a real hard time getting access. A couple of folks, worked on trying to get the camera in there. Once we can figure that out, we'll have the videos to include in any kind of biddable documents we put together so we can show people what we're looking at. And we'll move forward as soon as we get the recommendations from Alan, and we can put a package together and get it in front of the assembly. Stephanie met with some interested parties regarding creating a BMX track for the community. This would be at the corner of Haugen and Sandy Beach in some land that the borough owns. It's set up for public use. Lots of work will be needed before we have a plan for the community to review, but they're starting talking about it. I did get the formal application to DNR for the Papke's Uplands and Tidelands. It's been submitted. Had a couple of questions. I've got the answers back to DNR. I'll continue to work with them as they move forward in that process and keep people up to speed when we hear more. And then I will be out of the office at the next assembly meeting. I'm going to run down to Portland and see my granddaughter. Anyway, unless there's other questions.
Any assembly members have questions on the manager on his report? Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you. Just, can you give me an update on the status of the dispatch staff, police department?
In what way? What?
Are we fully staffed? Or
No.
are we-
Okay. Sorry. I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
The answer is no. We got close, and then we lost two additional dispatchers. One who decided they didn't like the work, and another who had an emergency down south and had to leave. So we're back to 3 dispatchers at this point, and Captain Holmgren's still having to step in quite a bit. Jim, I get that right?
Yeah, we had one of them that stepped away and then another one was hired by a local business owner or a business person here in town.
I mean, the same guy who bugs me every time we hire one of his people. He
Yeah,
took one of ours.
yeah, who's sitting in the audience, but that's all right. We still like them. I mean, we're putting out the word everywhere we can. We're talking about hosting an open house, just trying to get people to come in, see what the job actually entails. I've been working with Becky on that. So I'll work with her more when I get back. But basically, I've been attending these recruitment and retention seminars here, and every agency is facing the same exact thing we are. And I've got some stuff that I'll be bringing back where they talk about different ways to try and help out, trying to solve the issue, but it's nationwide right now.
Thanks, Jim. Jeff, did I?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any other assembly members have questions of the manager on his report? Okay, thank you very much, Manager
Sir.
Giesbrecht. That brings us to unfinished business. First item is ordinance 2022-13. This is an ordinance determining that property conveyed to the borough in a tax foreclosure proceeding shall not be retained for a public purpose and shall hereafter be sold. This is the second reading. Would entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its second reading.
So. Second.
Made by member Mucci, seconded by member Len. Is there any discussion on ordinance 2022-13?
Yes.
Member
Um,
Marsh.
Thank you. So, am I to understand that this situation has not ever arisen before? Or how has, property been conveyed to the borough for a tax foreclosure in the past? Is this something new to establish it in ordinance?
Maybe the manager could answer that, or
Got me too, Jody?
or one of the staff.
Sure. Actually, we have to do this on any time we foreclose on a piece of property.
On every individual case?
Every individual.
I
case.
see. How frequently does this happen?
Wow.
Every couple years. Yeah, not very often. And then once the assembly, if they decide they don't want to keep it, at some point down the road, we'll, set up, an auction. The assembly will decide, how to sell the property. And then at that point, the previous owners could still buy it back from the borough if we get their mail back. They get a lot of notifications, but we've been getting their mail back. Once it's sold, and not that many people know this, but once it's sold, the money that we get first goes to pay all the fees that they've accrued and the property taxes, back property taxes. But then if we can find them, the rest of the money would go to them. The borough wouldn't keep it, but if we can't find it, then the borough keeps the money. But anyway.
So the cost generated by its sale would cover any garbage cleanup, any residual structures, derelict or otherwise? on
Yes,
property?
in this case, I believe it's just land.
Okay.
And so there's nothing there. Once in a while, we'll have a derelict trailer though, and that's a little bit different scenario because, usually there's a different owner for the land of the trailer park. And then you have a derelict trailer that if no one claims and no one probably wants to buy, and possibly the borough just wants to remove it because it's dangerous, then it might cost more than, it'll cost us an expense. So, yeah.
Any other discussion on ordinance 2022-13 in its second reading? Seeing none, will the clerk call the roll?
Donna,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Jeff, Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, ordinance 2022-13 passes unanimously in its second reading. That brings us to item B under unfinished business. This is an ordinance 2022-14, an ordinance updating the borough code to provide for elderly housing and assisted living directors at Mountain View Manor. This is the third and final reading for this ordinance. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance.
So move.
Second.
Motion's been made by member Mucci, seconded by member Marsh. Discussion.
So yes, if you would, if I may, please, thank you. I'm sure much research has been done on this. What would be the ramifications of retaining just one director for both pieces?
Manager Giesbrecht, can you answer that? I couldn't do it correctly.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part of your question.
That's all right, thank you. What would be the ramifications of retaining just one director rather than dividing it into two?
So this really came up for two reasons. The first was trying to replace our outgoing director. We found that it's almost like two separate businesses. So elderly housing is basically an apartment complex, and you're primarily dealing with HUD. And assisted living is a residential care facility. And we found that other than us, no one really had combined the two. So when we were recruiting, we had a really difficult time trying to find somebody that was willing to do both jobs. So the other part of that is as we've talked, we're in negotiations with the hospital to potentially move assisted living under their umbrella. And if that's the case, we would still would need elderly housing staying with the borough, and we would need a director to run that place. Elderly housing actually makes money, has money in the bank. It's kind of, and assisted living is really the challenge for us. So having the two separate directors allows them to focus on it and allows us to make it easier if the time comes to spin this off to the hospital. The new director could go with that, and we would still have somebody that could run elderly housing.
Any other discussion on ordinance 2022-14? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
David,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Jeff, Thomas,
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2022-14 passes unanimously in its third and final reading. That brings us to ordinance 2022-15. This is an ordinance adjusting the fiscal year 2023 budget for known changes. This is the second reading. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by member Mucci, seconded by member Kinsinger. Member Lynn.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move to amend the supplemental budget in the second reading to create a new special revenue fund, 288, Local Assistance and Tribal Consistency Fund, to record the revenue of $1,006,800 that was received from the U.S. Treasury Department today.
Second that.
Okay, we have a amendment on the floor, and yeah, we got an email from the finance director today that we received half of the money, the remaining ARPA funds, and we got $1,008,600 from memories, right? And so we'll be expecting the other half later, and so that's what this amendment is. It's just pass through to accept the money into this special fund. And maybe briefly, Jody, you could just describe to the public that there's, it's what comes along with it. There's no restrictions on how long we could keep it, and
Yeah,
I mean,
so this
just
ARPA
brief.
money is a little bit different than the other ARPA money that we've received. I sat through a webinar last week about it. 1.5 billion was allocated to eligible revenue sharing counties. 15 boroughs in Alaska received these funds. There is an interesting formula of how they used it. They used the economic distress index, and then they times it by the number of federal acres that we have. What was interesting about this money is there's no deadline to spend it, whereas the other two pots of money that we received of ARPA funds, there's a deadline. So that's really nice. I mean, we could hold on to it and save it for when we really need it. We can use it as a non-federal match to match federal money. Usually when you get federal money, you can't use it to match other federal money. And so that's pretty exciting. We don't have to follow Davis-Bacon wages for projects, which makes projects really expensive. Really expensive. It's pretty exciting, actually. I mean, basically, we can't spend it on lobbying. But yeah, with the amendment, I hope that we can just be really thoughtful in how we spend it in the future. And yeah, if you have any more questions, please let me know.
Okay, thanks for your explanation. And when can we expect the other half?
In the beginning of 2023.
Thank you. So any other discussion? Member Kinsinger?
Yes, Jody, what did you have to do to get this money?
Well, that's the funny thing is, when we had that work session about ARPA funds with Nils Andreasen, it was a webinar many months ago. He kind of said something about how we might be getting some more money, and we were like, what? We didn't do anything. It's kind of like, they gave it to us how we get PILT, payment in lieu of taxes from the federal government. And I think it kind of was allocated similar to that. So yeah, we're pretty lucky because there are a few communities in Southeast Alaska, Wrangell, Sitka, Juneau, that did not get this money. They're actually contesting it. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Member Lynn?
Follow up on that question, since that's been contested, and I know they were back to the congressional delegation on it. Is there a chance that we will lose some parts of what we've received, or let's maybe go on that some parts of the next installment would go down? Do you have any feel yet for where this is at?
I have not been told that that will be the case.
I-
I do know, though, that of the 2,000 communities that received the funding, if they don't file and submit their first report by January 23rd, then they lose that money and it gets reallocated to everyone that has submitted that report. So maybe we'll get a little bit more, you never know.
Yeah, through the mayor, Assemblyman Berlin. Yeah, I don't think there's any chance of us losing this. The federal government, when they allocate money like this, it's pretty good. And I wanted to say out loud, thanks to Nils from AML, because he did a ton of work on this. He had early on recognized that there were these boroughs here in Alaska that were counties. And that was kind of part of the deal, that we didn't have another municipality. So in other words, we weren't a city and county of Juneau or Wrangell or Petersburg. We were the Petersburg Borough. That had a big part of it. And he recognized that and had read the bills and kind of talked it up a little bit. And so if he did stuff behind the scenes to make it happen, thanks to him. But like Jody said, it was really just kind of, wow, a couple $1 million is kind of nice to find in the couch cushions.
Thank you. I totally agree with you. He did a tremendous amount of work behind the scenes, and with the counties, with the lower US counties.
Any other input from assembly members on the amendment to accept this money and put it in a special fund 288?
I do have one more question for Jody, if I may. So you mentioned based on federal acreage that is in the borough, is that that primarily, if you could split apart the pieces on what it was based, that would be helpful.
Yes, the allocation that they took into account was economic conditions of each county using measurements of poverty rates, household income, land values, and unemployment rates, as well as other economic indicators over a 20-year period. And then this is called the Economic Distress Index, the EDI. And then they took that scaled EDI and they times it by the acres of federal land, yes, within our borough.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any other input on this amendment? If not, will the clerk call the roll on the amendment?
Jeff,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Thomas, Donna, Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Okay, the amendment to ordinance 2022-15 passes unanimously. That brings us back to the main motion on the floor as amended. Member Bucci.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to amend the supplemental budget in the second reading to increase the harbor budget line item for the Middle Harbor anodes from $71,000 to $93,000, an increase of $22,000 in order to cover the cost of the purchase and installation of anodes.
Okay, motion been made by member Mucci, seconded by member Newman to amend the harbor funding. Harbor Master Wallen, could you please give a brief explanation?
You bet. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we had a line item in our budget for this project in the Middle Harbor. We need to zinc those piling. We've zinced everything else in the harbor. That's the last piece. When the state built our harbor, they didn't do that part of it. And Middle Harbor, if you can believe, is 14 years old. and we wanted to try and do it in the first 10 years. But we've had a lot of issue trying to get supplies and getting a contractor. So on Thursday, Tamco came through with an estimate and a cost based on getting materials and installing. And my number of 71,000, I need to bump that up to 93 to cover both the material purchase of the zinc, the brackets, and then to install them once we get here. So
Okay, thank you
That's
for that explanation. Is there any other discussion by assembly members on this amendment to the supplemental budget? And just another note, other harbors in Petersburg are failing because they weren't zinced, right? Some of the piling are beating off, so we're gonna address that as well. So I think it's money well spent, in my opinion. So if there's no other discussion on this amendment, will the clerk please call the roll?
Donna,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Okay, that brings us back to the main motion and,
May I make
Member
an
Marsh.
amendment?
Yeah.
I'd like to amend ordinance 22-15 to adjust the FY 2023 budget for known changes, second reading. I would propose that we vote on these individually. Perhaps it's too onerous to do that, but that would be my point. Or I would like to discuss item numbers 8, 9, and 12, if we could. Specifically, I guess,
so-
what would be the amendment? To vote on those individually?
yeah, that would be an amendment made properly, so we need a second to that amendment. Seeing no second, your motion for the amendment fails. So that brings us back to the main motion as amended with the two previous amendments. Are there any other proposed amendments? Member Fine Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I propose to amend ordinance 2022-15 here by removing item 12, the increase for the police department budget for small tools and equipment to purchase the Axon Fleet police car cameras that we've heard so much about.
So I didn't quite follow your amendment. Was that to remove?
My amendment was to strike that item.
Take item 12 out of the supplemental budget. Is there a second for that? No second for his amendment? Okay, seeing no second, the amendment, proposed amendment fails. Back to the main motion for ordinance 2022-15. That's the adjustments to the fiscal year 2023 budget for known changes. So we will be voting on this in its entirety as amended. Just so clearly. Member Marsh.
May I discuss number 9, bring that to more details. So if I understand correctly, that is the subdivision estimates for the 3 areas, Hungry Point, Graham Street, and I can't remember the other one, to reduce them from what their present standard is, road standard, to decrease those to 24 feet rather than 28 feet and float the roads. I'm wondering if there are any examples of floated roads where we could say, well, yeah, this has worked well for X number of years, or boy, floating roads is a really bad idea.
Through the mayor, I can respond. So this is basically to amend the budget where, because the assembly voted to ask P&D to give us a cost difference. So in other words, if we did use lesser standards, what would that do to the cost? It does not authorize us to actually do the lesser, it just
Sure.
gives us, authorizes P&D to do that analysis for us. We have streets all over town that are floated. I can tell you, and Chris may want to respond to this better than I can, which is it adds to the long-term maintenance costs dramatically. I don't have numbers to that, and I doubt Chris does off the top of his head. But when you build a road down to hard pan and backfill it, it's going to last a lot longer with a lot less problems than floating it. On the other hand, if you look at some of the earlier cost estimates for some of those subdivisions, some of the biggest costs are exactly that, digging out And so, we were trying to gather information for the assembly and the housing work group. Task force, thank you. So that they had as much information as they could. And we'll see what happens when we get that far. But it literally was just to give the assembly and the community an idea of what those cost differences really are.
Thank you for your clarification. Are there any other proposed amendments to ordinance 2022-15? If not, I'm going to ask clerk to call the roll for the main motion as amended. Member Fine Walsh.
I don't have an amendment per se, I just, an item of discussion. For the people listening on the radio, there's been a lot of talk about police car cameras. And I just want to, clarify a couple things. My initial disagreement with this item was because the department was trying to use ARPA funds to finance the cameras, which I felt was an inappropriate use of ARPA funds. You know, and now it's popped up again here in the supplemental budget. And my disagreement here stems from the fact that, you know, unlike the harbor master who, you know, knew there was going to be cost and, you know, kind of failed to, you know, get exact right what the cost was going to be, and is now coming to ask for us to cover, you know, cover the overage. It sounds like there was no amount funded. I mean, this is the entire cost of the police car cameras. And if you were, the police department was in conversation with these camera providers, it seems like that should have been something included in the budget when it was presented before us. I guess, you know, if this was coming before us and, you know, maybe the cost of cameras had gone up slightly since the chief has spoken with them, that would be more understandable. But I want to be clear that my disagreement here is because there appears to have been no effort to fit this into the budget when it was submitted to the assembly, and now they're asking to increase the budget. You know, and I don't see any reason why these can't be paid for out of the budget in the next year. Frankly, I feel a little bad that we made the chief, you know, kind of explain why these cameras are helpful. I don't like to see the assembly micromanaging the department heads that way. You know, I mean, the chief is responsible for determining what his cars do and don't need. It's not really our responsibility. We're just here to keep the budget rationalized and make sure we don't spend more money than we're making. That's all.
Okay, with that being said, will the clerk call the roll on ordinance 2022-15 as amended?
Donna,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Scott, David,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Thomas,
No.
Jeff,
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2022-15 passes with a 6-1 vote with member Walsh opposed. Okay, let me scroll down here. It brings us to new business, item 16. First item under new business is resolution 2022-15. This is a resolution supporting full funding, $8,236,815 for the State of Alaska Municipal Harbor Facility Grant Program in the fiscal year 2024 state capital budget. If approved, this resolution will show Petersburg's support for fully funding the Municipal Harbor Facility Grant Program in fiscal year 2024. I'd entertain a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by member Mucci, seconded by member Lynn. Any discussion? Clerk call the roll.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna,
No.
Bob,
Yes.
Jeff, David,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes. Okay, resolution 2022-15 passes with a 6-1 vote with member Marsh opposed. That brings us to resolution 2022-16. A resolution establishing a housing task force. The assembly approved establishment of a housing task force at their August 1st meeting and appointed 14 members to the task force at their October 3rd meeting. Clerk Thompson realized after the fact that establishment of the task force should be done by resolution per borough charter. Approval of this resolution will satisfy that requirement. So I would entertain a motion to approve this resolution to move forward with our housing task force.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and second by member Mucci and seconded by member Kinsinger. Discussion. Marsh.
So does this have an expiration date, or is this in perpetuity that we're gonna have a housing task force?
The way I understand it, it's gonna probably be in perpetuity until they come to us with some, ideas and, recommendations, thoughts, or whatever they can come up with. And like I've said before, it's a nationwide issue and, hopefully we could, get some guidance. It looks like some, good people put their names in to be on this task force. That's all I know about it. So, is that the way, remember, being this? Yeah, Steve, Manager Giesberg, what do you, I mean, I thought it was formed and there is no deadline. We didn't put a sunset on it or a deadline.
In response to your question, to my knowledge, the assembly did not put any deadline on it. I would assume that the task force would come up with a series of recommendations for the assembly to review and look at. But I'm just assuming that. I don't know that. But yeah, the assembly did not put a deadline on.
Could I make a motion to amend?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to amend resolution 22-15, resolution, oh, sorry, I got that one wrong. 22-16, a resolution establishing housing task force to expire within 2 years, say fall of 2024. And the reason why is I think it, sorry, yeah, maybe you want a second.
Is there a second to
Thank
the
you.
motion?
I'll second
And I
that.
don't know, okay, seconded by, so we have a motion on the floor presented by Member Marsh to put a sunset or to disband the task force, housing task force in 2024. And it was seconded by Member Klein Walsh. So discussion. Okay.
Thank you. I guess the reason is I hate to see another arm of the government just grow at an unregulated forever kind of deal. So I would say it would be nice that by a certain time, we could have some plans. And if we don't, then we could relook at it and see if we want to extend it for another 2 years, rather than just think this ongoing entity that who knows how big it will get. And I think it'd be nice to have it sunset and expire.
Okay, any other discussion on this amendment? And Clerk Thompson, just for clarification, would we put this in as another whereas or
Yes.
any other discussion?
I'd like to
Member
see
Newman.
an option, thank you. I'd see an option to extend it. I mean, I see the point of a 2-year, which is a good period of time, but the housing issue is going to be with us for probably a long time. So at the end of 2 years, revisit it, decide it's not working, sunset it. If not, then we extend it.
So the motion on the floor is an amendment to add a whereas to disband this housing task force and let's just call it November of 2024. You have something, Clerk Thompson? What
Yes,
would you like to
I have
say?
a question. So I'd like to know if you want the whereas to just say it will be disbanded, period, or if you would like it to say that the assembly will reevaluate the continuation or disbanding of the task force.
I would leave that up to the maker of the motion. Member Marsh?
I would say reevaluate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So is everybody good with that? I mean, we understand what the language changed, so. That would be added if this amendment passes, so we will vote on the amendment to the resolution. Clerk Thompson?
Thank you. Scott,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna, Mark,
Yes.
Jeff.
Yep.
Bob,
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Okay, and since we have officially formed a housing task force at the last meeting, Jay Stanton Greger expressed interest in being the facilitator to this, and I think if it's okay with the assembly at this point, I would think we should appoint or vote for a facilitator. And if I would like to appoint, if he's willing, Member Kinsinger to be the facilitator, since he is already one named on this housing task force.
Mr. Mayor, I'd consider it. I would also like to consider one of our 2 new members that we have here, that if they would be interested in facilitating it, I would not be opposed to that at all.
Do we have any interest from either of the newly affected, elected assembly members?
Thanks for the opportunity. However, I would defer. Thank you.
Yes, also thank you. I think I'll decline at the time before I take on any new responsibilities.
So member Kinsinger tried to get out of it, but if he's willing, like, I guess he is, if the two newly elected officials didn't want to. Without any objection from the assembly, I would like to appoint member Kinsinger to the facilitator for that. So seeing no objections, we could enter that in.
Yes, but we still do need to vote on the
Okay, we'll
original.
vote, okay. Call the roll, clerk. Go ahead. member
Could I raise a question? We have two new members, and this was something that was passed by a previous assembly. So I would, for this to work, I really hate to waste people's time unless we have buy-in from the entire body to move in this direction. I've been on too many advisory boards, task force, whatever you want to call them. And at the end of the process, it just gets thrown away. So I guess what I'd like to do is, I think we all just need to, I guess what I'm trying to find out is, do you support this process going forward? And do you think this is the right approach? Or do you think that there's perhaps a different way to do this?
If I could respond to that, member Kinsinger, I would think since we just passed the resolution establishing the housing task force, and it was it a 6-1 vote? Well, we amended it.
We only have amended it. We haven't passed the
Right.
resolution yet.
So, how do you think we should proceed? I think if we pass this, then we'll have.
That's a good indication that. Yeah, my only hesitation is, I think, you can task force things to death, and if to be effective, it should be done quickly. There's some really good people on this. I'm a strong believer that this problem is going to be solved by private industry, but there is definitely a function for government in here. And the main function the government has is through planning and zoning. And we also have a whole lot of land. So we're in a situation that nearly every community in Southeast Alaska doesn't have. So for this to work in our community, we might have to take a little bit different approach than other communities, but we have the advantage of actually having property, which if you talk to our peers in other places, they just don't have any land. That's their first biggest problem. So if we're going to move forward with this, we have to be willing to listen to some new ideas. I hope this group of people can come up with some new ideas. And, if you don't think this is a good approach and a good way to do it, then now's the time to have the discussion, and we don't have to do this. The assembly has the right, as an assembly, if we have our own ideas on how we want stuff to be done, we just make them. The next meeting you say, well, you tell Debbie ahead of time and this is what we want to do. But a lot of times it's too big of an issue and we don't have the expertise, and we have to draw upon other people in the community to get their expertise because they know a whole lot more about the subject than maybe any one of us separately will do. So, but to do that effectively, we have to be willing and open to hear what they have to tell us. And if you guys can all buy into that, I don't have any problem sharing it, and I think it'll be effective, but we have to go into it with that type of frame of mind. So if you don't think we can do it, vote the resolution down. I'm going to vote supporting it because I think lack of housing is one of the biggest economic impediments that we have right now in the community. People just can't get people to come up and work because they can't find any place to live. And I think we need to see what we can do about it.
Okay, any other input from assembly members? Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree with member Kinzinger. This is going to be a huge issue here, trying to solve this problem. I don't think we can solve it with one answer, but we have to be sincere when we vote on this resolution. If you're not behind, if you don't think there's a housing problem in Petersburg, then I think we need to be honest with the people who are on this task force that we're not going to waste their time with, them coming forward with some recommendations, then have the assembly kick it down to planning and zoning or just not pay attention to what they have to say. So with our vote this evening, and we vote to support this, Dave, and this resolution, then I think we'll move forward. But I don't think we want to do it insincerely and not support what we're trying to get accomplished here. So I'll be voting in favor of this and I hope we continue to move forward with it. Thank you.
Any other input from assembly members? No, I'm in favor of forming this housing task force. And there's a good group of people on it. And my take on it, we just see what kind of ideas they could come up with after they research it, and then we'll discuss it with planning and, you know, see if planning and zoning, see what tweaks we need to make. So I'm in support of this resolution as amended. So if there's no other input, will the clerk call the roll?
Bob,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Okay, item C under new business, request for reappointment to the Early Childhood Education Task Force. Chelsea Tremblay was previously appointed by the Assembly to chair the ECE Task Force. Because she did not retain her Assembly seat in our recent election, she is requesting to be reappointed to the role to continue the work. I'd entertain a motion to approve this request.
So move.
Second. Motion's been made by member Lynn, seconded by member Kinsinger. Discussion. Member Lynn.
Yes, thank you. I think, member Chelsea did a really good job of leading it. And I think in the packet, we saw a letter from an individual that really supported what she did. It was an excellent letter, in my opinion, where that group is going and what they've accomplished in a matter of about 3 months. And I would like to see that continued with her leadership in it. I think that looking at Petersburg and we're quite a bit farther ahead than some of the other locations in the state in terms of their thought processes and the childcare industry from where other municipalities are at. So I'd like to see it continue and continue with her leadership.
Other discussion? I agree with member Lynn's comments. I will be in favor of this request. So if there's no other comments, will the clerk please call the roll?
David,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Scott, Thomas, Donna.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chelsea, for putting your name in to continue this endeavor. Next item on the agenda, item D, Alaska Municipal League Housing Task Force. AML is forming a housing task force with a child care subgroup and requests nominations of persons to serve on the task force from member communities. Please see AML Executive Director Andreessen's description of the task force in the attached email. So I would entertain a motion to support this housing task force. So we need a motion to get on the floor. And then we have to appoint the member, member Lynn.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to do it a little bit different. I would move that we make member Kensinger our contact with AML on the housing task force, and that we make Chelsea Tremblay our contact for on the childcare side of that, because I think we can make a lot of progress statewide if we were to do that.
I'll second that.
Okay, so should we get the motion on the floor to approve it and then amend it, or, so I guess we could just do it all at once. You made amendment to, we won't make it difficult. You made a motion to add Chelsea Tremblay as the contact for the childcare side of it, and member Kinsinger for the housing task force, and seconded by member Mucci, so that we'll have discussion on that item. And that was gonna be my intent, was to try to appoint member Kinsinger to that. And this is probably a good idea to have Chelsea Tremblay involved. She's been in that task force all along. And so, any other discussion? So we know what we're voting on. Dave, you're gonna volunteer?
Yes, I think I have been.
Yeah. All right, will the clerk call the roll?
Jeff,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Donna, Thomas, Mark,
Yes.
Scott.
Okay,
Thank
we'll
you.
see how it progresses from here. Item E, Alaska Municipal League 2022 Local Government Conference. The AML Local Government Conference will be held in Anchorage, December 7th through the 9th, 2022. Newly elected official training is scheduled for December 5th, 2022, In the fiscal year 2023 budget, the Assembly approved attendance at this year's conference for Mayor Jensen and one other Assembly member, plus 2 new Assembly members to newly elected officials training and conference. To date, Assembly Member Lynn has expressed interest in attending the conference with myself, Mayor Jensen. Assembly Member Newman is looking at attending newly elected official training and the conference, and Assembly Member Marsh will attend the online newly elected officials training offered by AML. So I get, I'd entertain a motion to approve, these expenditures. We've already budgeted for them, but since it's an action item, I think we have to.
I think what this is actually up for is to see who, other than member Lynn, would like to be the second person attending the conference.
Would any, okay, well, we'll get along the floor as presented with a motion, and then if anybody would like to amend it to add someone, we'll go from there. Do I have a motion to approve this, travel?
So move.
Second.
Motion made by member Marsh, seconded by member Kinsinger. So we have, you know, the members listed that are going to attend. Is there a motion to, and we have it budgeted for one other person to travel?
Yes, sir.
Would anybody else be interested?
Just for clarification, I'm just going to be attending the newly elected official training on December 5th, but not the conference itself.
Well, if no one else is interested at this point, then the clerk call the roll. Just should send the,
For member Lynn to attend?
yeah, well, member Lynn, you're, yeah,
I'm sorry, Mayor. In the budget, we approved the mayor and one other assembly member to go.
plus,
Correct. The mayor plus one other assembly member. We didn't name that other assembly member. So this is just, Bob had expressed interest, but I didn't know if anyone else was interested as well. This is
that's
really
kind of
just
what I-
a,
kind of
yeah.
what I asked for.
yes.
And no one put their name on, so I'm assuming that myself, member Lynn,
Okay,
and member Newman will attend.
thank
Then
you.
he'll, for part of it, and member Marsh will attend telephonically, or however.
Thank you.
Online. I'm not very technical. So, clerk call the roll on that.
Mark,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Bob, Scott, Jeff. Thank you.
Okay, we have that set. Item 17, communications. We have correspondences received since September 29th, 2022 on tonight's agenda, and we do not read those. People, if they want to come to the meeting and read them, that's fine. So it's on the agenda if anybody's interested. Next item, item 18, assembly discussion items. There's none presented, so first item under that topic is assembly member comments. Do any assembly members have comments this evening? Seeing none. Recognitions. Do any assembly members have recognitions? Member Feinwalsh.
Yeah, I'd like to recognize the folks down at Keto's for serving free food every Sunday when people go in there and had biscuits and gravy last weekend. People were watching football. It was really great. And I know a lot of people really appreciate that service. I just wanted to give them a little recognition for the effort they make for the community.
Where that? Any other recognitions by assembly members or staff? Thanks, Jody, for applying for that $2 million. Okay, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed to adjourning?